Hey everyone, Mr. Macintosh here. In this video, I'm going to show you 4 different ways to reinstall macOS on your brand new Mac Studio, along with if you want to be able to downgrade to a previous version. We got a lot to cover. Let's jump in and get started. The length of this video is a little bit long because it's meant to be an ultimate guide to be able to reinstall macOS on your Mac Studio. And I show you multiple ways to do it. So what I always do is I put detailed chapters in the description of the video so you can jump right to the section that you need. For example, if you only want to be able to reinstall macOS with a USB drive, you can jump right to that section to be able to do that. And I also include an update section here that shows you if there's any news or updates that you might need to know about the reinstallation of macOS on the Mac Studio. So you got your brand new Mac Studio and you need to be able to reinstall macOS. Now there's 2 different ways to do it. The first ways I'm going to show you in the first 4 steps are erasing the entire drive and reinstalling a fresh copy of macOS. Now the 5th way I'll show you at the very end is reinstalling over the top of the current version of macOS. Let's say you install the macOS update and something failed or something didn't install right and got corrupted. You can use the full installer of macOS to install over the top and copy over brand new files and possibly fix the install of macOS without erasing the drive, because when you do that, all of your files and data is retained when you do it that way. But the first 4 ways I'm going to show you are going to be erasing the disk and reinstalling a fresh copy of macOS. The first way we're going to show you how to do it is erase all content and settings, and that's the fastest way. The second way I'm going to show you how to do it is with DFU Restore mode with Apple Configurator 2, but you need a second Mac. That's the second fastest way, which takes about 8 to 10 minutes. The third way is reinstalling macOS with a USB drive with a macOS full installer on it. And we'll boot to that and we'll reinstall macOS, and that takes anywhere between a half hour and an hour. And the fourth and final way is to do with macOS recovery and downloading macOS over the internet, and that can take anywhere between 1 and 3 hours depending on your internet connection. And the 5th way I'm going to show you at the very end is again showing you how to reinstall macOS over the top of a current install if something went wrong or something's not working right. Now that we know the 2 different ways to install and the ways that we're going to show you, let's talk about the minimum version of macOS that we can install in the studio, because there is a minimum version, and if we can downgrade macOS on the Mac Studio. Now let's talk about compatibility for macOS versions for the Mac Studio. All Macs have a minimum version of macOS that can be installed on it. And that's because when Apple builds that version of macOS for the specific hardware model, they only include drivers for that version of macOS and newer versions. For example, the Mac Studio can only have 12.3 macOS Monterey and newer because that's where the drivers were installed. If you try to install 12.2, it would not work because none of the drivers are in that version and is not compatible with the Mac Studio. Because I got a lot of questions like, hey, can I downgrade the Mac Studio to Big Sur? The answer is no, you can't, because Apple never built any drivers for macOS Big Sur or any version of macOS Monterey up to 12.3. I made this handy chart so you can see all the Mac M1 models and which versions you can install on them. For example, the original versions, Big Sur 11.0.1 and all newer. But for the 24-inch M1 iMac, 11.3 came out, so the minimum version for that model is 11.3. If you have any questions about the minimum version, let me know in the comments. Okay, let's get into reinstalling macOS on the Mac Studio. Now, the first way we're going to do is called Erase All Content and Settings, and that's a brand new feature for macOS Monterey and newer macOS versions. It's a wonderful feature, and it follows the iPhone way of erasing all content and settings, and it brings it to the Mac. Now, this is only compatible with T2 Intel Macs from 2018 or newer, and of course all M1 Macs with macOS Monterey or newer versions of macOS. So how do we do that? All we need to do is go into the System Preferences here. Once we're in System Preferences, go up to the System Preferences menu bar here and click on Erase All Content and Settings. It'll start a brand new Erase Assistant. Now, really quick before we continue here, if you do not see the Erase All Content and Settings in the menu bar, you need to be a volume owner of the Mac and you have to be an administrator to be able to do this. So as long as you're the first user to set up the system and you're an administrator, you can do this. So now that we have this Erase Assistant here, we can type in the password for the administrator. and hit enter. If you're signed into iCloud or anything like that, it's going to sign you out of iCloud. If you have any Bluetooth accessories here, it's going to remove those. And if you have any Wi-Fi, it's going to remove those. So make sure all of your things are backed up with Time Machine or a USB drive or iCloud or anything like that before we do this, because all of your settings and files are going to be erased when we do this. So now that we know that and all of our files are backed up, we can click on continue. Now it gives you one final warning that it's going to erase all content on this Mac. It will also instruct you what's going to happen here. It's saying that your screen may be dark while your Mac is being erased, and your Mac may restart more than once. This process is complete when your Mac displays hello on the screen, meaning that it brings you to the setup assistant, and that means that all the settings are removed and macOS is restored. And that's the beauty about erase all content and settings is that it does not touch the operating system. It only clears the Macintosh hard drive data drive with all your volume on it, resets it fresh, and then brings you to the setup assistant like nothing happened. And it's only going to take about 2 minutes. So we're going to click on this here. And here it goes. You can see it's going to spin right here, and then it's going to reboot the Mac, and then we're going to be in macOS recovery because we have to reactivate the Mac. So we'll give it a second here to restart, and there it goes. There's our chime. Here we go. There's our loading bar, and now it's going to load us into macOS recovery. Okay, we're in macOS recovery. If you had a Bluetooth keyboard and mouse, you're going to see a picture of a mouse here or a keyboard or a trackpad. You might wonder what that means. You have to reconnect your Bluetooth equipment right now so you can navigate through the setup system because Bluetooth accessories were removed. But since we're using a wired keyboard here, I can continue on here. If you have trouble connecting your Bluetooth accessory to the Mac at this point, you can plug it in with USB and it will immediately detect it without having to turn it back on and having it detect it. So let's click on continue here. Now we're going to have the activate Mac screen. Let me explain what's happening here. On all T2 and M1 Macs, we have to activate the Mac. And what this is going to do is it's going to get a brand new installation certificate from Apple for the reinstall. And it's also going to check to see if you have activation lock or Find My Mac activated. If you do, you'll have to sign in with your Apple ID at the next part after you connect to the internet. All you need to do is you can plug in Ethernet right now, or you can connect to Wi-Fi up here in the upper right hand corner to be able to activate the Mac. Okay, we're connecting to the Wi-Fi here. We're connected. You can see immediately it jumps once we're connected to contacting Apple, checking for Find My Mac activation lock, and getting a new installation certificate from Apple. Done. Your Mac is activated. You will restart in 58 seconds, but we're going to click restart so we can jump in right now. All right, we're back at the setup assistant. That was under 2 minutes. Look how quick that worked, and erase all your content and settings and you're right back up to a fresh version of macOS. Now keep in mind, when it does do that, it will leave it on whatever version that you had on there before, and then you're all set and you can walk through the setup assistant here to set up your new Mac. And if you have a Time Machine backup, all you need to do is plug it in now, and as soon as we get to the Time Machine or Migration Assistant, you can plug in and it will restore your backup. We're on to now step number 2 and reinstalling macOS with Apple Configurator 2 in a second Mac. Okay, now we'll talk about the second way to reinstall macOS on your Mac Studio, and that is using a second Mac with Apple Configurator 2 application and a USB-C cord connected to the Mac. And what this is going to do is it's going to take an IPSW file, like the same thing that you use when you're reinstalling iOS with your iPhone or iPad, and reinstall macOS over USB-C from one Mac to the other in under 8 minutes. Now, why would you want to do this? Well, if you're doing multiple Macs at the same time, this would be a really great way to do it. If you want to do it really fast, this is another great way to do it. But another reason why is that you might have some serious problems with your Mac. For example, this is what you see here, a prohibited sign with a thing under there that says support.apple.com/Mac/restore or startup. And that means that you have a serious startup problem with your M1 Mac. And what you can do here is that you can boot the Mac into DFU mode, and then you can see it in Apple Configurator 2 and you can restore macOS. This particular Mac Studio, as you can see, is in trouble. If you look at the front here, we are actually flashing SOS with an orange light on the front, and that means that this Mac will not start up. It's not even showing anything on the screen. And I put the Mac into this mode so you can see a demonstration. You can hold down the power button to see if the recovery screen comes up, but with this Mac it doesn't even work. That means the Mac is in really bad shape, and the only way to be able to restore this Mac, to be able to use Apple Configurator 2, when you can't get to macOS recovery, you can't get it to start up, you can't get anything on the screen, this is going to be your only way to be able to restore. So now that we know that, let's talk about how to get it into DFU mode. So as we can see here, we are powered on, and what we're going to do is we're going to power it off first, so the power light goes off. Okay, it's off. Now what we're going to do is that we are going to put it on its end here so we can see what's going on, and then we're going to unplug the power for 10 seconds. And then we're going to get our USB cable while we're waiting for it to power down. The cables that are compatible with DFU mode and Apple Configurator 2 are a USB-C cable to USB-C, a Thunderbolt cable, which is not really supported by Apple, but if it's in a pinch, it may work for you, or a USB-C to USB-A. So let's take a look at those now. Your first go-to is going to be the Apple charge cable that came with a laptop, for example. This works perfectly and it's the most reliable cable to use. But if you got a Mac Studio and maybe an older Mac that doesn't have USB-C, you might be in a pinch. So in that case, you can actually use a USB-C to USB-A connector if you have a 2015 or lower Mac that does not have a USB-C connector. As long as you have macOS Catalina 10.15.6 or newer Mac, you can perform the restore from the host Mac. Wonder if you don't have that. Well, if you have, for example, this is an HP 3.0 USB-C cable, that will work too. Again, it's not recommended by Apple, but a Thunderbolt cable can work in a pinch. You can connect it. If it doesn't come up on Apple Configurator 2, unplug and replug after you put it in DFU mode, and a lot of times it will come up. But again, only use this if none of the other cables will work. Now that we know cabling, let's get our USB-C cable out here and connect. Now on the Mac Studio, we're going to use the connector closest to the Ethernet port. That's the only port that will accept DFU restores. So we'll plug in here, and then we will plug into our host Mac, and it does not matter where you plug in on the host Mac. So now that we're connected here, we're ready to put it into DFU mode. But what we're going to do is open up Apple Configurator 2 so we can see as soon as it gets into DFU mode, we'll see a big DFU icon and we know we're in DFU mode and we're good to go. Okay, now we're ready to put the Mac Studio into DFU mode. So we've got our power cable here. We're connected via USB-C on this port and we're ready to plug it in. So what you want to do is get it aligned here so you can plug it in easily, because you have to hold on the power button for 1 second first, then plug in power. So we'll push it now, 1000, plug in. Keep holding, and then we'll watch on the screen to see the DFU mode, and we're in, and now we can let go of power, and we're in DFU mode for the Mac Studio. And you can see it is going to flash here the orange SOS when it's in DFU mode. So that's another confirmation. So let's put that down here. And now that we have DFU mode, and you're not going to see anything on the screen, even if you got it connected to a monitor. Once we have it in here, we're ready to start the restore. When we're in Apple Configurator 2, we have two different restore options here. If we right click inside the box here, we can go to advanced here, and then we can click on Revive Device. What Revive Device does is only reinstall macOS Recovery on the device and leaves all the data intact. So that's what you would want to try first if you're having an issue. But a lot of times when it's as serious as this, that does not work. But try it first. Revive Device again, reinstall macOS Recovery, and does not erase any of the data in the drive. But again, this Mac is really messed up, and the only option we're going to be able to do is a restore. So the restore option is up here. A restore will erase the entire SSD drive on the device and reinstall macOS Recovery and macOS on the device. There's two ways of doing this. If we click this right here now, it's going to download the entire 12 gigabyte IPSW from Apple, and that can take some time to do. So what I'm going to show you how to do is we're going to go grab that IPSW manually so we have a copy so we can do the restores fast every time. Okay, to get the correct IPSW file, you can go to my site, and I'll put a link in the description or above here to be able to download the manual IPSW file. So scroll down here and you can see that I've got a section for macOS Monterey or macOS 13. When it comes out, it'll be above here. And then I also have macOS Monterey Beta IPSW IPSW if you want to test beta. And then finally, I have Big Sur production and then Big Sur beta IPSW files. So if we want to be able to install macOS Monterey 12.3 or newer, because again, that's the minimum, we're going to get 12.3.1, which is the newest in this video. So we'll click on this button here and it will download down to our downloads folder, and then we'll be able to use that to restore. I've got my IPSW file right here, Universal Mac 12.3.1 Restore IPSW file. As you can see, it's 13.88 gigabytes. And again, you could just let it download, but I like to actually have the file on hand so I can do super quick restores by just moving it over. So all we gotta do is move this window over here, drag it over to the DFU mode, and as soon as you see it highlight here, you can let go, and then you'll see the message box here. Do you want to install firmware version 12.3.1 on Mac? Now, before we continue here, make sure you have the latest version of Apple Configurator 2 from Apple. Go to the App Store, make sure that you have the latest version. You also might get a pop-up that says you have a mobile device update that you have to install. Make sure you click and install that first before you go to this step. Now we have the two options like we talked about. The Revive, again, will just reinstall macOS Recovery and retain your data. You can try that first. And if that fails, the only thing we can do is restore. That's the only way to rescue this device. So we're going to click on Restore, and then it's going to restore the system. If you were downloading, it would be downloading here from Apple right now, the latest version of macOS that's compatible with the Mac Studio. But instead, we're just copying it directly from our hard drive and sending it over USB to the Mac Studio, and it's going to be able to reinstall here. So if we go to Activity Monitor, we can actually watch that happen live. So we can watch our data read and data write per second here, and we'll see that it's writing over 300 megabytes a second here. We can also click on Apple Configurator 2 here, and then click the window and look at the activity and see what's actually happening here. Now, one thing to keep in mind is that it has to expand the IPSW file on macOS. So make sure that you at least have 20 gigabytes or more of free space on your Mac when you're doing the restoration. Now, you can actually do more than one Mac Studio at the same time. And look, we've got our screen come up here because we're starting to actually do the installation now. The more Macs you have doing in Apple Configurator 2, it has to unpack each individual IPSW. So make sure you have plenty of space on your Mac before you start the restore. We're going to let this restoration finish, and when we're done, we'll be at the Setup System window. It usually takes anywhere between 6 and 12 minutes to do the restore. And that's it. Apple Configurator 2 reinstalled macOS on this Mac Studio in 10 minutes or less. And when you're done, the Mac will reboot, be at the Setup Assistant screen, and you'll see a lock on the Apple Configurator 2 on a successful reinstallation. Now let's move on to step 3 to be able to reinstall macOS with a USB flash drive with a macOS full installer on it. Now let's go over the third way to install macOS on your Mac Studio, and that's with a full installer on a USB flash drive. Now I'm going to include a link in the description on how to create a USB installer and how to download macOS to be able to do that. And once you have the USB created, we can go to the next step. Okay, now that we have our USB installer of macOS created, we can plug it in and to prepare the installation. So we'll plug it into the Mac Studio here, and we'll wait for it to load on the desktop. And there's our full installer. This is what we're going to use to reinstall macOS. Now what we're going to do is make sure all the data is backed up on your Mac before we begin, because we're going to be erasing the entire drive. This is a good time to be able to use Time Machine, iCloud, or any kind of backup service or a flash drive or a USB hard drive to make sure you're backing up on a daily basis here. Shut down the machine, and we're going to boot it up to the boot selection menu. So we're going to go to Shutdown here. Shutdown. Okay, now it's off. Now what we're going to do to boot to macOS Recovery and the boot selection screen, all we need to do is hold down the Mac Studio's power button to be able to get to that screen. So all we'll do is hold on the power. What we can do is we can watch the power LED, because sometimes it doesn't show on the screen. So we see the power LED. I'm going to hold it down, and you see it go full power light, and then it's going to go off a little bit, and then you can let go of the button. There it goes. Now I'm letting go of the button, and then we should be at the boot picker menu here in about a second or two on the screen. And there we go. This is the M1 recovery menu to be able to either boot to the hard drive or macOS recovery. But since we're going to be doing it from the USB drive, we're going to select install macOS Monterey or any version of macOS that you want to be installing in the future right from here. The reason why we're going to be doing it this way is because of speed. Click on continue after you click on the install here. And what I mean by that is that instead of downloading 13 gigabytes from Apple, we're going to be installing it directly from the USB drive. And that's going to be a lot quicker. Probably up to an hour quicker depending on your internet connection. Once we get to here, we're in macOS recovery. Now keep in mind, with M1 Macs, we are not booting from the USB. We're booting to macOS recovery and running the macOS installer application off the USB. And that's different from Intel. From Intel, we actually booted off the USB drive. Now that we're here, we can click continue here to get to the main menu. Now keep in mind, if your system is file vaulted or has Find My Mac on, you might have to use your username and password to be able to get to this screen. But since file vault is off, that's why we can get right to the macOS Monterey screen. Click on agree here. This brings us right to the installation menu, but we want to do a fresh install. So we're going to quit the install macOS Monterey here, and then we're going to go right to the disk utility here. Click on continue. Now this is important to follow these steps because we are going to do a full erase of the drive. Now this is where people can get into trouble. And what do I mean by that? If we click on, this is the internal drive for macOS hard drive. If we click this down arrow button here, a lot of people will just click this and click erase here, and they just delete the APS volume. What that does is it orphans the data drive and causes a bunch of problems. So we want to cancel that. And what we want to do is click on the top level drive, and that's going to erase the volume group. The volume group is the operating system drive with the OS and all your data. So we want to click on erase here and click on erase. And notice here that it is going to erase the volume group. It says this is a volume group, and that's exactly what you want to see because it's going to erase both of these and recreate just Macintosh hard drive and Macintosh hard drive data. So we'll click on erase here. What it's going to say is that to do this, we have to perform what's called an erase Mac. To erase all delete data from this volume, you will need to fully erase this Mac. This will delete all data, media, and settings and volumes on this Mac. An internet connection is required to reactivate this Mac and reinstall macOS. So we're going to click erase Mac here. And then this is one final warning. This is going to erase all the data on your drive, erase Mac, and restart. Okay, we're back at the setup assistant here for the macOS recovery. Let's click on next. And now we're at the Activate Mac screen. As we said in the earlier part, all the Bluetooth and Wi-Fi has been erased here. Now what we have to do is connect to Wi-Fi or Ethernet to be able to activate the Mac. What you can do is you can plug in your Ethernet now or connect to your Wi-Fi here. And as soon as it's connected, you'll see the switch here. And then it's immediately activating the Mac. And again, what it's doing is it's reactivating the Mac with Apple, getting a new installation certificate. It's also checking for Find My Mac and if there's any activation locks on the Mac before it will continue. And if it finds one, it will ask you to sign in with your Apple ID before it'll continue. But as long as that's clear, it'll say your Mac is activated and it'll say exit to recovery. Now we're ready to go. Reinstall macOS Monterey. Click continue and then click on agree, and then click on Macintosh hard drive and then click continue. Notice how it says 2 hours and 58 minutes remaining. That means that it did not go back to the USB. If it says that, it has to download. So we actually have to shut down, and then we're going to have to power back up using the USB. So we'll wait till it shuts down here. Now it's off, and I'm going to hold down power here. Okay, there's a chime. Wait. And remember, we're waiting for that light to go dim just a little bit. There it goes. We can let go. And again, that's only for the desktop because we don't have a screen activated right now. If you had a laptop, it would say, please hold for setup options. And once you see that, you can let go of the power button. There's our option. We'll wait a second here. And there's our install macOS Monterey. We'll click on continue. Okay, we'll click on next and then click continue, agree, and Macintosh hard drive, continue. Now notice how it only says 59 minutes now. That's how you can confirm, and obviously if you have a USB drive that flashes, you can see that it's activity because it's copying from the USB. As soon as you see the 59 minutes or around an hour compared it to the 2 or 3 hour, you know that it's pulling from the USB or external hard drive that you're using to reinstall, and it's going to go a lot quicker than downloading 13 or 14 gigabytes from Apple servers. So once this is done, we'll be back up and we can start on the fourth way to reinstall, and that's macOS Recovery. Okay, so let's say now that we still need to reinstall macOS, but we don't have a USB drive, we don't have a second Mac to be able to do Apple Configurator 2 restores, and maybe something's wrong with erase all content and settings and that's not working properly. We have the fourth option, which is just booting into macOS Recovery and then reinstalling macOS over the internet. So let's do that now. We'll shut down our Mac. Now that it's off, we can hold down the power. And again, to get to macOS Recovery, because we're not going to see the status on the screen, we're going to hold down the power button here, and we'll see the light go on, power on brightest as it can go, and then it'll go off to a little bit non-bright, and there it goes. You can let go. We'll give it a second, and we'll come up on the screen. And here's our boot picker here, and we'll click on Options, and then click on Continue, and that'll boot us right into macOS Recovery. Okay, we're in recovery. Now keep in mind, if this is file vaulted or if you have Find My Mac on, you'll be asked to enter your password for File Vault or your Apple ID to be able to get into recovery. Now that we're in recovery though, because we don't have any of those activated, we can erase the drive to reinstall macOS Monterey. This is your final warning. Make sure you have all your data backed up before we erase the drive. So we'll click on Disk Utility here, click on Continue. You want to make sure you click on this top level Macintosh hard drive volume here, then click erase. And the way that you know that you clicked on the right one is that when you click on the erase button here, you'll say this is a volume group. That's what you want to see, because you want to erase Macintosh hard drive and Macintosh hard drive data, or you'll have problems later because we want to do a fresh install. So click on erase here, and this is your warning here that it's going to erase the volume and then recreate it, and then we're going to have an internet connection is going to be required to reactivate this Mac to reinstall macOS. So we'll click on erase here, click erase Mac and restart. Okay, we're back at the recovery screen here. We'll click on next. And now we have to activate the Mac. We can plug into Ethernet now, or we can click on Wi-Fi up here. Okay, now we're connected to Wi-Fi. It's immediately going to activate the Mac, check with Apple, and then say it's activated, and we'll be able to exit to recovery here. There we go, exit to recovery. And now we're at the recovery menu. You can reinstall macOS Monterey right here. Click on Continue. Continue. Give it a second to load the installation information. Agree. Agree. And click on Macintosh hard drive and then click Continue, and it'll download the 13 gigabyte full install of macOS Monterey and then reinstall it on the Mac Studio, and then you're all done when you're at the Setup Assistant window. Okay, this fifth extra option that I wanted to add in at the very end is that if you are having problems with the Mac OS that's on the Mac Studio, for example, let's say you install the Mac OS update and some of the apps aren't working or the system's a little bit slow, you don't have to erase the disk. You can reinstall Mac over the top of itself. It'll grab a new copy from Apple, and then it will reinstall all of the operating system, but maintain your data. You still want to have a backup, always, before you start this, but all your data will remain on the system, and that's why it says reinstall. It detects that there's already a copy of macOS on there, and then we're going to copy over the top. So all we need to do is click on reinstall macOS Monterey, and then click on Continue, and then Continue, and then we make sure, this is a good call out here, that we have to connect to internet before we do this. So you can connect to Ethernet now, you can connect to Wi-Fi up here to be able to continue here. We're connected to Wi-Fi, now we can click on reinstall again. Click on Continue. Loading the installation information, click agree, agree, and then click on here, and then we can reinstall over the top by clicking Continue. And this is one last part, is that when we are reinstalling, we have to be able to type in our volume owner or the owner administrator's account password before we continue. So we're going to do that now. And there we go. And notice that you'll see it'll take however fast your internet connection is to download macOS and then reinstall over the top, and before you know, we'll be at the login window to be able to be done here. And that's it. We've shown you today how to install macOS multiple different ways on the Mac Studio. If you have any questions, feel free to leave them in the comments, and I hope you enjoyed this video and brought value to you. If it did, give it a thumbs up, or if you want to see more videos like this in the future, click on the subscribe button. And I wanted to thank all my viewers and especially all my Patreon members, and I really appreciate you. We'll catch you in the next video. Thanks.